Okay, I'm now going to describe to you the default parameters in the Ventway Sparrow miniature turbine ventilator by Novitec. I'm going to tell you the default parameter settings, the alarm default parameters, and just say some words to remind you about how oxygen is delivered and the limitations of the oxygen delivery to the ventilator. First of all, and this is a very important slide, of the initial ventilator parameters for settings according to the weight. And you will notice that there are default parameters built into the machine for limits of rate, tidal volume, IE ratio, and inspired oxygen concentration and PEEP level for every weight that you enter and start ventilation. Secondly, it also gives you, and you can see the change of the tidal volume to the inspiratory pressure in centimeters, the pressure that is allowed during inspiration for the initial ventilatory parameters set by default. The alarm default parameters are also very specific to the weight of the patient, child or adult, and the pressure that's allowed, the pressure limit that's allowed, the high rate that's allowed, the low rate alarm that's allowed, breaths per minute, the high minute and low minute ventilation parameters are set according to the weight. The PEEP level will alarm if it's more than 2.5 centimeters from the set value. And how to set the alarm, the PEEP on this ventilator is on the circuit. There is a PEEP valve adjust, and you adjust the PEEP, and at the bottom of the screen during the ventilatory parameters you see the PEEP level that you've selected. It's a very great interest to me that there's a big difference between the set PEEP and delivered PEEP on every ventilator. And the big mistake clinicians make is to set a PEEP level and think that that's what the patient is getting. You have to have a monitor of the PEEP level at the patient's mouth to know what's the machine delivering in terms of the flow and expiration and dumping pressure in the circuit. There are many kinds of PEEP. There's set PEEP, delivered PEEP, measured PEEP, intrinsic PEEP, auto PEEP. Each one needs to be defined. And this machine, although it does not have a number to set the PEEP on the screen, by adjusting the PEEP valve, you can optimize the breathing and the PEEP in the patient. The alarm default parameter for low pressure is 5 centimeters. The leak default parameter is either off or 100%. For invasive ventilation, it's 25%, but it is adjustable. The default value is 25%. The inverse IV ratio is either on or off, and the low tidal volume alarm range is 85% of the set volume. Now, it is possible with the Ventway to connect a nasal cannula system and deliver high flow oxygen therapy by nasal cannula with flow rates up to 60 liters a minute. Note that you can use a very cleverly designed oxygen reservoir tube which connects to the input of the ventilator, delivers low flow oxygen, and at 1 or 2 liters a minute, you can get the inspired oxygen concentration if the patient's being ventilated by 3 or 4 liters a minute to up to 50%. Very low oxygen consumption, which is perfect for long distance traveling. I personally have used this system on an airline flight with a patient ventilated all the way to the United States and back. When using the low pressure oxygen enrichment system, you must manually change the flow from the flow meter from the low pressure bottle or oxygen concentrator and monitor the patient oxygen delivery either by measuring the oxygen in the circuit or by using a pulse oximeter to determine that the patient's saturation is adequate. I find that a pulse oximeter indication is enough control and backup to monitor whether the oxygen that you're delivering is enough through the low flow system. And I found on international flights at altitude to the United States, you can actually get by with 1 or 2 liters a minute. Although you have the capacity for up to 8 liters a minute, the maximum allowed flow into the oxygen enrichment system is 25 liters, but that's because the ventilator will sense too much flow and pressure and not be able to deliver it. So you can use the low flow oxygen system with a pulse oximeter in transport and adjust the level of oxygen of flow by low flow to reach the desired value of the saturation. Or if you have an oxygen monitor online in the patient's circuit, you can select the oxygen that you want, and you can option the oxygen enrichment alarm in the ventilator parameters menu. Remember that if you're measuring the FiO2, it must be measured with a calibrated external oxygen analyzer if you want to have the alarms activated. The high pressure oxygen supply is when you have pressure in the hospital from the wall oxygen supply or from a pressure cylinder with supply. You can determine the percentage that you require from 30% to 95% in terms of the oxygen delivery. As long as the pressure is based on the manufacturer's specifications, usually 40 to 60 pounds per square inch. The oxygen mixer is connected to device as shown in the picture at the back, and it's specially threaded with a locking system to make sure it is secure and does not fall off. Thank you very much.